All right, let's dive into a really fascinating corner of criminal law today. We're talking about inchoate crimes. Now, that's a bit of a fancy legal term, but all it really means is incomplete crimes. It's all about what happens when a criminal plan gets started but doesn't quite cross the finish line.
So, picture this. A team of would-be robbers, right? They've planned a heist down to the last second. They've got the blueprints, the tools, the getaway car waiting. They're literally inches from the vault when suddenly the alarm goes off. They panic, they run, and they get away with absolutely nothing. So here's the big question. Did they actually commit a crime?
And the law's answer to that is a resounding yes. This is exactly where we get into the whole world of what are called preparatory crimes. It's an entire area of law built for situations just like this.
That's where we get our term inchoate crime. You can think of it as the crime before the crime. It's any action that is a clear step towards a much bigger offense, even if that bigger offense gets stopped in its tracks.
Okay, but you might be wondering, why punish somebody for something that, well, didn't actually happen? And the whole philosophy here is about one thing: prevention. The idea is to stop a dangerous plan before the real damage is done. The law wants to put out the sparks before they can become a forest fire.
So how does the law actually categorize these kinds of actions? Well, these incomplete crimes generally fall into three main buckets. Let's break them down one by one.
First up, we have the crime of attempt. And yeah, this one is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It's when someone tries to commit a crime, but for whatever reason, they fail.
Now, for prosecutors to prove a criminal attempt, they need to show two key things. First, that the person really truly intended to commit the crime. And second, they took what's called a substantial step to make it happen. And that second part, that's the real kicker. It's the line in the sand between just thinking about a crime and actively trying to pull it off.
So what actually counts as a substantial step? You know, this is where it gets tricky, and it's debated in court all the time. Just buying a ski mask? Probably not enough. But buying the mask and stealing a getaway car, and then showing up at the bank with a weapon? Okay, now we're talking. That is a clear, substantial step. You've officially moved from the planning phase to the execution phase.
Okay, so that's what happens when someone acts alone. But what if they have partners? Well, that brings us to our second type of encoded crime, conspiracy. This is all about criminal teamwork.
A conspiracy is born the moment two or more people agree to break the law. In some places, that agreement itself is the crime. But often, the law also requires an overt act. That just means at least one person in the group has to take one small, concrete step to move the plan forward. And get this overt act doesn't have to be nearly as big as the substantial step for an attempt. It can be something much smaller.
For instance, let's say a couple of people agree on a plan to rob a bank. That's the agreement. Then, one of them goes out and buys the ski masks for the job. That little purchase, that's the overt act. And boom, right there, you have a chargeable criminal conspiracy.
All right, on to our third and final type, solicitation. This one is pretty straightforward. It's the crime of trying to get someone else to do your dirty work for you.
Solicitation is simply the act of asking or hiring or even just encouraging someone else to commit a crime, as long as you have the genuine intent for them to actually go through with it. The crazy thing is, the crime is in the asking. It doesn't even matter if the other person agrees or just tells you to get lost.
So, if you offer someone $10,000 to burn down your competitor's warehouse, you've just committed solicitation. It makes no difference if they laugh in your face and walk away. Your words, combined with your intent, were the crime.
So we've got attempt, conspiracy, and solicitation. I know, they can kind of sound similar, especially when you imagine some complex criminal plot. So let's put them side by side to make the differences crystal clear. Here's the simple breakdown. Attempt is about doing. It's about taking that big, substantial step. Conspiracy is about agreeing. It's about teaming up with other people. And solicitation is about asking someone else to commit the crime. The number of people involved is a dead giveaway, too. An attempt can be a solo mission, but for conspiracy and solicitation, you absolutely need at least two people involved. So really, the fundamental difference is this. Inchoate crimes are all about the preparation, the danger that's created before the final goal is reached. Completed crimes, on the other hand, focus on the result, the actual harm that was done. It's the difference between trying to rob the bank and actually walking out with the money.
And this all leads us back to the big picture question. Why does the law care so much about crimes that were never even finished?
Well, it really all comes down to public safety. These laws give law enforcement the power to step in before anyone gets hurt. They act as a deterrent, making even the planning stages of a crime illegal. And ultimately, the law says that a person who is actively trying to commit a dangerous crime is a threat to society, whether they succeed or not.
But it really makes you think. The line between just having a dangerous thought and taking a substantial step can be incredibly blurry. It's a huge challenge for courts to figure out every single day, and it leaves us with a really critical question. At what precise moment does a bad idea actually cross the line and become a crime? Definitely something to think about.